we got a brand new LMG that's actually pretty good. And after testing, it actually has 3 different variants. To unlock this, you just do the naughty or nice event. You just have to do the naughty side of it, depending on what mode you want to play, whether it's for multiplayer, zombies, or whatever the case is. And then this will unlock the weapon. If you do the nice side, then you get the camo. It's a completely free event, and you get 22 days to do it. What makes the weapon interesting is that it actually has 3 different fire rates or different modes. We have the default version, which we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about. This is probably the main one we'll go ahead and be leaning towards. You can kind of see how this one works. It has its own set of damage profile, and it fires around 600 RPM, a little bit less than that. But when we switch it over to the other fire rate, it's going to bump it up to close to 900 at 895 RPM, and it's going to go ahead and reduce the damage. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually do enough damage to speed up the TTK in a meaningful way. So that's why I said we'll lean towards the default. I wouldn't spend too much time on that one. Even up close, this one with the slower fire rate and more damage is going to kill faster, which we'll talk about when we get to the damage testing. Also, I've tested it so you don't have to. There is a prestige attachment, which is the MFS 48 Dread Burst mod, and it says it converts it into a 6-round burst, which some of you guys might remember from another Treyarch Call of Duty. And pretty much with this one, the problem is the burst is just too insane. You probably could do it up close, but again, the fire rate, damage, all that type of stuff isn't going to be particularly good. Close, it is 11 shots to kill, so you could 2 burst if you land both of the burst and none in the, you can miss 1 bullet out of the 12 shots. And then at range, you need 13. So you would need 1, 2, and 3 burst to make contact. You'd have to average about 4 to 5 shots landing per, so it's not very effective. So the theoretical TTK in this case is going to be super far off, and it's not going to probably be particularly good. So that saves you having to prestige it unless you want to go for the camos. And as you can see here, this is the prestige 1 camo, and then we have the prestige 2, which is just a solid. And then if you want that last one, obviously you'd have to go through that one. So on the spreadsheet, I'm still actively working through a lot of the legacy weapons. There's not really a bunch of meaningful ones. I think the Kilo was kind of meaningful, but then they went and nerfed that today. So that's not all that important. Some people are telling me the TR2 is good as a SMG again. So maybe that's something I'll have to look into. But as of right now, we do have the spreadsheet with all the various TTKs. You can see most of them behind the camera, but you have access to this, so I don't really need to spend much time there. And that brings us to the TTK for the BO7 weapons. Obviously we got the close range, but the long range is kind of what we're focusing on here. We got the Sokol 545, which you can see right here, 617 TTK, which is up close. That's very good. The Warden, I got to probably adjust its algorithm because I think that's very unrealistic, but possible with the Warden. So that's a little bit of a problem there. But if you use the alt fire on the Sokol, it ends up worsening the TTK up to 804. You get worse damage range, but that TTK is maintained even at the further ranges. And then we get the burst version. It's even worse. So I would avoid both of those. I'm glad I was able to test those. I wish I would have known beforehand, so I didn't have to level up the weapon twice. But here we are. So we get the Sokol 617 and then 720, and that goes up to 58 meters. And then it'll have another damage drop off, which in this particular case, it goes to 823. And if we look at the furthest damage range, we can see kind of what these TTKs look like. Peacekeeper is okay. AK, pretty viable. Sokol, very good. MXR, pretty solid. A little bit slower fire rate as well. And then you can kind of see where a lot of things are. It looks like they're trying to get the TTKs between 800 and around 1,000. So hopefully we get some buffs to certain things and, you know, nerfs to others to kind of bring them in together. So we got a lot of good options. And then there's a lot of fun stuff to use. So I'll give some of my initial impressions before we get too deep into the loadout. I think overall the gun feels pretty good. It kills pretty quick. It's going to have all the general drawbacks of an LMG. Slow reload, slow movement. You could compensate for that with the mag, but that would cause an issue where maybe you don't have enough attachments to solve bullet velocity or range or any of the other things. I think you can do some gimmicky things probably with the modification to the ammo if you're doing the hip fire like Hades operator mod type thing. But overall, pretty solid gun and definitely good if you want to be competitive in the meta amongst the 4 or 5 other long range options that we currently have in the game. If it wasn't already clear, 100% pass on doing the burst unless that thing is broken in multiplayer. So the loadout I was using is this one here. We use the 3X, but a lot of times the ELO is good too if you're using it on smaller maps. Obviously, the gameplay that I showed in the background is just me jumping into casual, just kind of get a feel for it. And a lot of times it's just kind of getting a feel of how fast the gun kills in practice. If it has a little bit too bouncy recoil, the bullet velocity is not all there, you'll notice it in practice a little bit more, even if it is against bots or whatever the case is. We get 1,000 bullet velocity, which we kind of really want to aim for. Generally, 1,200 would be the best for a lot of these guns, but sometimes then you end up with wonky recoil issues. I went with the SWF suppressor over the monolithic because of the recoil stabilization part of that. We're getting the longest barrel. This one takes a little bit longer to level up, but it's going to give us the bullet velocity and recoil for both. If it wasn't going to go with the barrel because it's unlocked so late, I ended up going with an underbarrel instead, but you just don't have enough bullet velocity. So if we drop this here, the bullet velocity drops down to about 900, which for me, I'm not a fan of. I'm going to start missing some shots. So the barrel, I think, is definitely priority over the underbarrel, but you unlock that a little bit later, so you'll have to use that. I use my prestige token on that, so I got access to that a little bit earlier. Magazine, it comes with the stock 102, which is kind of a weird number. And the reload is a little bit slower. I guess you could speed that up, but then you'd be sacrificing an attachment. Around 6 seconds, which is kind of a long reload time, especially on Rebirth or Resurgence maps like Haven's Hollow. For the rear grip, I ended up using the stabilization grip just because I hadn't unlocked the first shot accuracy, so I need a little bit more time, but those would be the two that I would go with. The accuracy grip for the first shot accuracy, because the recoil just kind of goes just vertical, so it's generally easy to control. It does have a little bit of side-to-side wobble, as we'll get to when we get into the range, and then the stock, I used a vertical recoil and that one as well. You could go ahead and go with buffer springs, but that's only 10% across the board versus the stock. If we look at the stock, it's going to give us 15%, which is a little bit more improved recoil there. So that one's only if like you're going to stack recoil attachments. You can see the recoil on here. If I don't adjust for recoil, it goes a little bit to the right and then basically mostly just up and to the left. So, you know, you just kind of hold it and shoot in the same spot over and over. You can see it does have a little bit of wiggle, and that's kind of why it gets out of bounds. But overall, that's kind of how that would go. If I did end up swapping over the first shot accuracy, this is what I also recommend doing for you, is going in here and then adjusting it for yourself and seeing which one you end up shooting better with. You can see there is a little bit more bounce and side to side if you go with that first shot, but it kind of mostly goes up and to the left. So maybe this one's a little bit better, maybe not. I think this one just needs more time. I still think I prefer the other way for better. So that's kind of going to be the loadout there. I just kind of want to go through that thought process since there are new attachments that we're still messing around with and kind of figuring out what's good. And then overall, you kind of just use the gun and you kill pretty quick with it. So overall, pretty solid gun. Let me know kind of what your thoughts are. See you on the next one. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.